you have kind of voluntarily become homeless in the past in order to experience it, right?
Yeah, well, a man who drinks this much is going to end up homeless one way or the other. But I chose to be homeless, even when times were well, when income was good. Times weren't good, and that's sort of what drove me to it. I don't recall the year. I'm very bad with like years and time and recalling my own history.
How much of
But
that beer have you been drinking?
if I had more, I'd start recalling it, or at least not caring that I don't know for sure. Um, but yeah, so I used to be a member of a band called Dead Letters. At first it was Dead Letter Office, then we came around to, well, Dead Letter Office was before me, but we came around to Dead Letters in Detroit, and we actually picked up some steam as a band, and the Parliament Funkadelic was coming to Detroit. Parliament Funkadelic, a lot of people won't recognize the name, but they are no small act, no small band in musical history. And they had basically left Michigan, uh, I think after like maybe some prosecution or something like that, or some really shitty stuff that happened to them in Michigan. So they had left and said, we're not coming back to Michigan ever again. And so it had been like 2 decades or something like that. Maybe I'm exaggerating, I don't really know. But it had been a decade or two since they had been in Michigan. They were planning their We're Coming Back to Michigan tour, and we were going to be their opening act.
Oh, I see. Hmm.
So I only say that in order to preface this because, like, the sudden realization that this thing is taking off and this is gonna be my life, possibly. Do I actually want to be doing this? Like, it's one thing when you're just like a little, city band, neighborhood band, and you're, having fun with your friends, and it's cool that people like you and you're a little bit popular kind of thing. But if we're going to be on a big stage like that, this could turn into like my career as a drummer in Dead Letters. And do I want this for my life? And my answer to
Hmm.
myself at that time came in the form of crying into a plate of eggs at a ram's horn. Um, the lead guitarist and I were sobering up after a night of a row, and not knowing why I was smiling and laughing, and the tears were just streaming down, and it was like something was so broken in my life and myself that I just like didn't even understand myself at that point. And I quickly like came to the conclusion this isn't what I want to be doing. I still have like questions that I need answered, and that resulted in me reading the New Testament of the Bible, specifically focusing on the Gospels of the Christian, you know, King James Bible, and reading the teachings of Jesus and finding out, hey, this Jesus guy isn't as big of a prick as his followers seem to be. He's actually like, this guy's a political socialist. He believes in, like you can attain and achieve and experience happiness by just caring for other people and, giving everything that you have that is yours to others and just being at the whim and the will of other people's kindness and their charity. And like everything that he was saying was just exactly what I needed to hear at that point. And it was also a challenge to me. I considered it a challenge because actually in the Bible, Jesus, the Rabbi Yeshua, actually does sort of pose it as a challenge. If you don't believe me, test me, try it. Sell off all of your possessions, give the money to the poor, take up your cross and follow me, is the basic
And so you were
sentiment
like,
there.
well, fuck you, Jesus. Maybe I will.
That's right, Jesus. You think I'm a bitch over here? You think you just no? I'm gonna check you out. I check my fucking sources. I bring them
Call
to
your
Harv and Pawn.
bluff.
That's right. I'm gonna call your bluff. So I did that. I sold off like all the useless possessions that I had. I took the money. I gave it to the most poor and needy person that I knew, which was my mom, because later she would know that she had Sjogren's syndrome and she was trying to get SSDI, which is a 3 year long thing. So she had no income. She was living in her mother's basement. So I gave all my money to my mom and just like threw a guitar over my shoulder and a sack of clothes and honestly way too much shit that I couldn't carry it once I got there. And I threw a dart I had a map of the United States of, metaphorically, but literally at random, chose a place and went there, and it was Joplin, Missouri. And I landed in Joplin, Missouri off of a Greyhound bus that cost me $79 or something for the one-way ticket, and stepped off the bus in a city I did not know with no one who I knew in that city, and all the possessions that I had left in the world over my shoulder, and proceeded to try to survive, and more so proceeded to try to be of use to my fellow human being, and to be, giving and generous, and to be a good Christian soldier, so to speak. So I was homeless in Joplin, Missouri for, I think, a month and a half. My stories are fucking insane in the amount of things coalescing in order to make it so that I was cared for at every friggin' step. Harvey, I land in this city that I've never been in before, and as I'm walking down an alley trying to be quiet, I need to resettle my pack because it's too heavy on my shoulders. I sit down next to what I assume is an abandoned building, but I'm not assuming it so much as I'm just gonna be loud and stuff. If somebody's in there, I'm being quiet, and within like a minute, a dude comes around the corner and says, "Who's making all this noise back here?" And I just look up to him before I can give an answer. He just kind of motions to me and says, "Well, come on." And so I follow him around the corner of the house into the front yard, and he's got like patios. He's got like just patio chairs set out in his yard, and he's an alcoholic, and he's drinking heavily, but he's just like immediately invites me into his life. We start chatting. By the end of the night, he's like, "All right, well, you stay here tonight." And it turns out, what I find out after, talking to this man for several hours, that he's about as close to being deaf as you can be without being deaf. Like, he's legally deaf.
Yeah.
And he heard me in the alley while I was trying to be quiet through the cinder blocks of his house.
He probably more likely felt you than I imagine, like felt the reverberation of your footsteps.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it was the guitar too. But no, I was being quiet. The guitar was in the case. But yeah, he came around, and so my first night on the ground in Joplin, Missouri, someone generous and kind took me into their home and gave me a place to sleep. The next day, I went walking looking for a shelter and just looking for to tap into the city. I'm new here. My whole point of this journey is to try and, experience and be, a servant to other men in any way that I possibly can be, because the difference for me at that point, my homelessness, was that I am now free. The things that we own end up owning us, and I have nothing but what I've got on my shoulder, and the fact that I dragged so much along my shoulder kind of tells you how attached we are just generally as human beings to our objects and our material possessions and stuff. But I landed at a shelter called the Refuge Ministries, I believe. They were holding, of all things, the day after I arrived, the day after the fellow let me sleep in his house, gave me a roof, they were having a cookout thing that was to drum up attention and let people know that they're there, and also draw in donations to support the thing. I saw a flyer for that. I walked to where it was in the city without knowing where it was in the city, so that was tough, but I walked there, and then they had pots of food out and stuff like that, and instead of jumping on the ooh free shit, instead I just immediately ran up to somebody and said, "How can I help?" And just started grabbing stuff and helping them carry chairs out that they were setting up and things like that. And by the end of that day, just because I was doing what this crazy rabbi in an old book was telling me to do, which was be your fellow man's keeper, be his servant, everyone there was like, "We want you to stay in our shelter." And I was actually hesitant. I didn't want to take a bed away from someone who was there not by choice, And I was like, and I said that I don't want to take a bed for someone, I chose this road, I've got a guy over here who let me sleep in his house last night. He'll let me sleep there for a couple more nights, probably at least. And they're like, "No, we want you here because, what you're doing and your energy and your readiness to jump in and be part of community and help what's going on here is what we need here. Please, for the love of God, take the bed. So I did. And the stories just go on from there, but I had so many different interactions with people who were homeless, not by choice, not by like a spiritual journey that they were on, but because of finances, because of primarily 99 times out of 100, addiction to either alcohol or drugs. Pretty much
Yeah.
everyone in that center had gotten there because addiction had taken all of their money and all of their stability and everything from them, and then at the end of the day, they didn't have a roof over their heads. And that is the path of homelessness. 99.999% of the time, it's because chemical addiction has been involved. We saw a somewhat spike in not necessarily having to do with addiction in when the housing markets burst. And a lot of people just found that they were suddenly underwater in homes that they had been sold for far too high a cost. But those people tended to have like family who they could fall back on and places to go. And when you have ruined yourself and your relationships and your bank account and everything with this addiction, there's nowhere to go. You're just on the street, and your roof is now the overpass of a bridge that you sleep under. And that's who I lived with for a month and a half.
It's interesting that you say 99.9% of kind of homelessness is as a result of addiction and stuff, because one of the big things which kind of plagued my conscience, and I've got a story I can kind of tell about why it was on my mind so much, but in Sheffield, where I went to university, there's quite a lot of homelessness. It's quite visible. I did at least get pretty much approached by someone begging for money every day, probably twice, 3 times a day, if you're just walking around the city centre, around the university kind of campus. And you feel really guilty for ignoring them or saying no or doing anything, really. I feel like there's no easy kind of way to deal with that situation, especially for someone like me at the time who had come from a small town where there was no homelessness and kind of come to this university and now got people kind of coming up to me on the street and saying like, hey, I don't have any socks and I'm freezing out here and you need to give me some money, and you look at how like privileged you are, you can spare some money. And them being right, like I can spare money. I'm not so poor, even though I'm a student, and that's typically seen as like, oh god, all students are fucking broke. 100 bits! All students are fucking broke. 100 bits from Mel. Thanks, Mel. When I'm in London, a homeless guy laughed at me and said good luck when I said I had no cash and was unemployed. Yeah, interesting. But yeah, so this kind of dwelt on me because I was like, I'm getting by, okay? Like, I have money, I've got financial support for my parents and stuff, and like, surely, this is what I should do kind of morally, is to give away, some of what I have because I can afford to and they can't. The official government advice, and the advice apparently given by kind of all the homeless and rough sleeper charities in the UK, is do not give them money, because 80% of people who are asking you for money are asking so that they can just drown their sorrows in drink and feed their addiction. And you're doing them more harm than good, really, by giving them money. Apparently, the official advice is just engage with them and ask them what they need. And, if they say, oh, I need some food, I need shelter, I need warmth, I need clothing, then if you want to donate and if you want to be generous, then give them that. Don't give them money that they can spend on drugs, because
I can absolutely confirm that is what they're, what most of them are going to be using. I have, in addition to my experience down in Joplin, right now I live on a very seedy street in a very seedy area of a very seedy city called Detroit. and I live on 6 Mile. And there are more houses on my block that are abandoned than there are not. And because of that, we were actually quite happy to see, or at least I was quite happy, to see two homeless squatters move in to sort of just take one of the empty houses across the street. Because until previous, that empty house had been occupied by actual drug dealers. So it was nice to see, an improvement in the population of the street. That we moved up from an actual drug dealing house with constant activity at their door to just two homeless folks who were drug addicts. And I have had a number of interactions with them. They come to my door. I have given them blankets. I have allowed them to charge cell phones and things. As a matter of fact, their cell phone went missing for a day, and I lent them the use of my old cell phone that I'd been given by my father when he was done with it, this iPhone 4. And they've been, sharing that with their other cell phone, and allows them to keep going because they rely on that actually as a means of getting money, because they're using PayPal, and they've got family and friends and people out there who are giving them money occasionally to basically keep getting drugs. But it is also how they eat and things like that. So I can confirm that just having a conversation, like an open conversation with the fellow across the street, he was 1,000% open. There was no even hint of a firewall or barrier between him saying, "Oh yeah, it's just it's drugs," and I was like, "Oh, you're doing the boys and the girls," and he's like, "Yeah." And boys and girls is street slang in Detroit, at least for heroin and crack.
Oh,
Which
okay. Yeah, I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know from past experience with another woman who what that is, and and that those two things tend to be sold together, because one's a downer, the other's an upper, and you kind of combine the two and find the place, and one of them does. So yeah, he was just completely 1,000% open about that. And I have given them many, many things that they have asked for. And actually, if I'm honest with myself, there was a day, he asked for 50 cents. I didn't have 50 cents. I did have $1. I gave him $1. But they have only asked, they're trying to be nice about it, because, they live here. Don't shit where you eat, kind of thing. But I have very clearly sent the message that I'm not giving out money here. I can help you out with some things that I can help you out with, but I have given hundreds of dollars to a drug addict before, trying to help them, a homeless drug addict, before trying to create a space for them to get their life together, get their feet down, and be like, okay, now you've got warmth, you got a shelter. I know you're not going to come off the drugs immediately, but now you got a place where you can wean off, and you can start looking forward to, you can build something and not have it fall out from underneath you because you got nowhere to call your own, and you got no clothes, and you got no support system. Here's a support system, and that individual, and it really is just, that individual, but that individual, much as I believe, were sincere in the attempt to turn their life around and wanted to make something of it. I mean, drugs are drugs for a reason. Heroin is heroin for a reason. It is a demon that is living inside you that is saying, all that I really need to do right now to be happy is this. Or I could go out and do all this hard work and try and reassemble the life that's collapsed underneath my feet.
This is the thing, is that I feel like a lot of modern society really does look down on addiction with disdain. And there are several things that kind of the more progressive, you might say, kind of side of society is becoming aware of. Like, depression is not a thing of choice, and you can't just, hey, don't be depressed. And I feel like now we're kind of aware of that in our society. And previously, that was much the same. You just kind of look down on someone who's depressed. Less so now, but I think this is what we still do with addiction, which is that, like, oh, I was a fucking drug addict, and just like, oh, I could just, if you give him support and give him the money and just like kind of provide, he'll just lift himself right out of that, and he'll be fine.
This is actually the second time.
Illness.
Second time
And
that I would reference Bill Hicks in this live stream because he used to say that he talked about homelessness at one point in his comedy skit and said, people say you give them money, they're just going to spend it on drugs, and his response was, yeah, we ever been addicted to drugs? Drugs are pretty fucking important to a drug addict, you know?
of course they would. It's priority. It's a priority.
It's a priority. And
Yeah.
actually, there is an argument to that side of things too, is that you can't just like decide to stop doing drugs all at once. You might die, depending on the level of
Cold turkey.
chemical, physical
Yeah.
addiction that your body has gotten to. If you go cold turkey, you could die from withdrawals. Uh, and trying to pull yourself back together in a situation where you are on the street and you are homeless and it's already cold at night, and now you're going to be going through either the DTs or, literal like heroin or crack withdrawals. It is basically the worst scenario that you could have to try and pull yourself out of this thing that kind of, I mean, you think about how people get addicted to drugs, and it's basically this one time, this person I knew said, "This is so cool, man. Try this." And I tried it, and it was really cool. And so I kept doing it. And now I don't have a home anymore. Like, it's a there but for the grace of God go I kind of a scenario. We've all been told about the danger of drugs. We all know the danger of drugs. We're each responsible individually for our own choices. But if you make that one wrong choice with drugs, it could just ensnare you
Spiral.
in a way that, you have to have a superhuman will to pull yourself back out of it. It's a hard fucking situation.
And
Hey, beer.
yeah, it's so that this is something that I've kind of come to realize. I think initially when I was told like, "Oh, you're not supposed to give money to homeless people because they just spend it on fucking drugs," I kind of initially my reaction was, "Well, that's probably just your prejudice, right?" When someone told me that. But I've had plenty of experiences. Just to name a couple, there were a couple of years ago, a guy was I was walking home late at night, and someone asked me for some change, and I asked them what there was for, because I started doing that by that point. I was like, "Oh, what are you going to spend the money on?" And he said, "Oh, I just really need to use a phone booth to call my wife. She's in a different country, and I'm homeless here, and just I haven't spoken to her for ages." And so yeah, sure, I'll just give you a few pennies. And oh, there's a phone box right there. And then he just walks away. So like I
Yeah.
just happen to be walking in the same direction as he would be going to the nearest phone box. And he walks and then goes straight past the phone box and then disappears up an alley. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, okay, so you just lied to my face to get that. Okay.
Yeah. And
Another one.
that's, yeah, same experience with the person who I said I spent like hundreds of dollars trying to like dig them out and create stability for. The last time that I saw them, because I had a very close relationship with them and because they had taken so much from me, I was like, I'm not giving you anything. Get the fuck out. It's like I had taken a hardline stance with this person of like, yeah, you can come around and we can be friendly. And the moment that you ask me for $5, you can go fuck yourself. Um,
Yeah.
and like eventually just under the pressure and and just wanting to get rid of them, just like I don't need this shit in my life. I said, all right, I'm gonna get you in the car, I'm gonna drive you to wherever you want to go, and I'm gonna drop you off, no money. And we
Yeah.
got to where we were going, and they refused to get out of the car unless I gave them,
Oh.
some money that they were then going to go into the gas station where they had me drop them to buy some like a drink and a snack and that kind of thing. And I just said, fuck it, here's another $5. What, it's a drip in the bucket of how much you've taken from me at this point, how much I've tried to do for you. And they got out of the car and like immediately started walking away from the gas station toward
Yep.
toward a drug house that I knew, because I'm familiar in this area. So yeah, it's just
Oh
like it
God,
was
it's even
not
worse.
even on the radar to try and maintain the illusion that I'm not just gonna go get high now. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of that ability to just completely straight-faced lie and then not even attempt to kind of continue the act once they know they don't need to it's something that just has to come from that, like having done it so many times, I guess. And it feels like really betraying. I mean, in your situation, you've given far more to any one specific individual than I ever have in this. So I
Mm-hmm.
can only imagine how much betrayal that felt like.
Mm-hmm.
But another time, kind of these are examples of occurrences that I've had a few times because it's generally the same pattern. One guy kind of, a lot of them start off by telling sob stories, like, oh, I got kicked out by my landlord and he was an asshole, and now I'm trying to look for another place to live, and I just need to get by while I sort something out, and also my girlfriend is sick, and my mother is this, and so could you just give me $5 or £5? And I said, well, I don't want to give any money, but hey, if you're in need of food or something else, like whatever it is that you need, I'll go with you to the shop and I'll buy it. And as soon as he heard that, he just turned around and walked away. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I see. Yeah, how's
Well,
your mother
and
doing?
and all this is not, it's not to disparage. Oh, oops! It's not to disparage like the homeless or homelessness, or to say that these people are just a bunch of fucking liars. Screw them.
No,
It's just
no.
to like be aware and like because it is just like my experience. It is my experience, and I know it to be true.
This is all anecdotal as well. But yeah.
But it's not like just to be like, don't give those people any money. It's to like, what we need is instead of like feeding people's addictions, is we need actual viable systems in place on a societal scale that are designed to break the cycle of addiction and homelessness. And we have definitely tried, but our trying, at least in America, I can say that our trying looks like the trying of someone who needs to try so that it'll look like they're trying. Who's not
For the
actually,
appearance.
yeah, who's
Yeah.
not actually trying to get anything done with it. There is at this point in America a number of commercial organizations who target the homeless and target addicts, and will literally drive down the streets in Florida. I know that this is a big problem. That they'll drive down the streets, look for homeless people, ask them if they're on drugs, and say, we can get you into rehab today, right now. And you think, well, that's a great thing, free rehab, they're getting them in there. But the reason that they're doing that is because they get subsidies from the government in order to like have these people go through their rehab processes, which is also fine, lovely, great. The government is supporting the rehab thing. But the problem is that like what it seems is that the people doing the rehab clinics want them to come back. They have a financial incentive to not actually
Well,
help you finish rehab and get your life together and follow up and help you like
that
stay the
sounds
course.
that sounds exactly like the US prison system, where they have a requirement to have a certain number of people in jail, and the state pays them based on the occupancy, and there's a contract between several states and their privatized prisons to have a minimum occupancy.
Yeah. Yep.
What's
And
the
this is not
incentive to kind of
just
rehab if they get paid by keeping them in?
and like this isn't just like conjecture and I am a fucking socialist liberal, I'm on that end of the spectrum, so I'm not like fuck the homeless and fuck government helping people. No, I want everybody to pay more taxes so the government will help us all. But like the problems that I'm talking about here, are like statistically observable, that the people who organize these rehab clinics and temporary shelters and stuff have incredibly high recidivism rates and are happy about that. Like the stories have come out over the course of the past few years, journalists like going, So like they'll call them up and say, "So what's your like success rate?" And they're like, "We have an 80% success rate." And they say, "Okay, can you back that up with any statistics?" "No, we can't." And then they start like digging through the documents and calling people and stuff like that and find out you have a 12% success rate, and the people who you claim like you helped recover have been in 5 times and they're just checking in again. It's people who have a monetary incentive to make money off of the government by pretending to help people who actually need help. And that's not help. It's a very difficult like thing to figure out. How do you help it? What do you do? Because addiction is addiction. It is in your brain, and it's like having a dark black passenger. What was it? Dexter, HBO's Dexter. It's like having a dark passenger that's along with you saying, "Let's go do this." But it requires like systems that allow you to get your feet underneath you, that help you get clean, create a support structure, create a way for you, help you find work, help you get into a situation where you're using your skills that you have in order to like better yourself, and that help you keep from going back to the easiest solution to all your problems, which is whatever your particular addiction is. And this includes gambling. I mean, let's not just focus on drugs here. Gambling is a huge problem as well. Addiction in general just leads to homelessness.
Yeah. And it's so all this kind of talk about, well, don't give them money because, regardless of the exact addiction, it's likely going to go on their addiction. And I say don't give them money in quite an aggressive way, but no, it's coming from charities like don't give them money because it's not what they need. They need the actual whatever specific help they need. But people just don't know this. Like this is kind of the official advice, but I didn't know what to do, and so I kind of want to put this out here. What you should do is first of all, don't get into the habit of just completely ignoring them, I think. Because I think one of the worst things for the people who are genuinely homeless or genuinely rough sleeping, and we've discussed there are people out there who are just kind of scammers. There are people talking in chat this entire time about people who aren't really homeless. They're just trying to beg for some money and then going back to wherever. But whatever small percentage it is, there are people out there who are genuinely rough sleeping, genuinely just need some help, and are incredibly lonely and isolated, and probably in various awful situations. But because we get asked for money so much from all of the beggars on the street, it's so easy just to want to ignore them and to not deal with it, to not make eye contact, to not invite in the sob story and have to listen to it. And I think that's kind of the worst effect on most people, is that it just leads to completely ignoring them, and it's completely dehumanizing. I was really interested to see a game come out recently. I think it was called something Become Homeless. It was like a homeless
Really?
man simulator. And you roam
Okay.
around the streets of some generic American city and you beg people for cigarettes and change. And there are like, you say gambling is one of the possible addictions. There's these stalls in the game that you can go to buy like food and drink and stuff from, and you can buy lottery tickets and you can win money back on the lottery. And the guy I watch, Call Me Kevin, who's just fantastic if you want some good Irish comedy personality. He played it and was just making this big funny thing of constantly going back for the lottery tickets and constantly spending all of his money on the lottery and just losing it all. But it was weird to watch it because even though it was a comedy video, I really got this kind of a glimpse into a sense of empathy of, hey, like everyone you go up to in this game, they just tell you to go away or they just completely ignore you. And it really is, even just in the video game setting, it was like, man, this feels weird. And so what I did the next time I came across a homeless person who seemed genuine, It was this 50-year-old lady who was walking down the street, just asking for change, but not particularly coming out with any sob story or begging as such. She was just walking along pretty much. I stopped, I gave her a little bit of change, and then just sat down with her in the rain. And she got out her recorder and started playing on her little crappy, really cheap, cracked, wet, soaked recorder. Um, and having said don't give change to homeless people, at this point I was actually helping her ask for change. And I think that was because she did enough to convince me that she wasn't an addict. Her situation was that her family members had died. Her husband had passed on. She had quit smoking recently, and she avoided the city centre area of Sheffield and avoided begging there because at one point I asked her, like, hey, we're on the side of the street here. Is this really the best place you could be? Like, is this the most optimal place in the speed run of homelessness? Is this the optimal route to get that as much money as you can? And she was like, well, I don't go to the good spots because all the drunk and, high addicts are there and they'll just rob me of what little I do have. So I was helping her ask for change, and I got that insight into their perspective and the kind of that hit of empathy where I was like, man, this feels crap. I'm here just asking people for change in the rain and people just completely ignoring you. I won't even just pretend to not hear you, not see you at all. And that, I think, is just one of the worst parts of the whole experience. Just the emotional outcastness. And it occurred to me just today, actually, doing some reading, but it's all kind of been brewing over the years. The people who are genuinely rough sleepers and genuinely homeless and are being basically just kind of pushed out by society and no one's really talking to them or really paying much attention to them, they don't know what kind of support is available to them. I mean, there are charities that go around and there are these support organizations that if you report someone rough sleeping and tell them where they're sleeping and to kind of give them a rough description, then supposedly they'll go and say, hey, do you need a shelter? We can try and sort you out with some accommodation. But if no one reports them and they don't have any way to properly talk to anybody for any length of time, they have no idea where to go to get help. The most they can probably do is go to the local council. And if you've ever tried to go to the local council for anything in the UK, most city councils do not have the time of day for upstanding tax-paying citizens, let alone the homeless. So I feel like the best thing you can do is probably give a homeless person the time of day, try and determine whether you think they're genuine. Don't give them any money, but help them out with information about where they can go to get help. If they are genuine, then they'll, probably be in desperate need of that. And
where you're telling a story of a woman who has like decided I'm not gonna go hang around in those areas anymore. Like two thoughts occurs. One, in the conversation that I had with one of the squatters who's moved in on my street, they were telling me, like I was asking, I just started the conversation with, so what are you guys gonna do for winter? Because it's coming around. Are you planning to try and, like seal off that house and try and keep some warmth in or something like that? And he was like, incredibly, actually, I said that and then I was like, because honestly, I got clothes here that don't fit me anymore, clothes that I just never really wore in the first place, gifts that are in my closet. I got things that I don't need. And if it would help you, you can have my clothes. And he very honestly said, dude, I am, a traveler at this point in my life. Like, I have nothing to hold me down. And, like, the reality of my situation is that anything you give to me is going to be worn until it's dirty and then thrown away. And I don't want to take your stuff and just end up throwing it away, because anything that I have in my life just has to be left behind. Which, spoke volumes to his character in the first place. That, you know,
Hmm.
when he is sober, you know, he's like thinking about, I don't want to be wasteful of your kindness, so no, keep your kindness. But in addition, that conversation led to him saying, like, no, we don't, like, I don't want to stay here anyway. We're not planning on like making that house stable for winter. And his statement was, I need to get the fuck out of here. I can't. And this is how this relates to like the woman that you sat with. I can't be here. I know all of the places to go to get what I want. You know, I know all the people. I have all the contacts. You know, he was describing in my neighborhood, which is why I know how many places there are around. He was like, I go over there, 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 I go over there. I cannot be
Yeah.
here. I want to go into recovery. I want to get out of this cycle. I cannot be in the city of Detroit. And kind of on the heels of that conversation, and I think that's similar to what, you know, the woman who you sat with in the rain was sort of expressing, that I don't want to be around those people because, you know, they're dangerous, but also because they're just shitty influences that aren't
Yeah.
going to help me in any way.
Yeah.
But like, I almost think about that and say, is that what we really need? Is that sort of part of the solution that hasn't been addressed? Is relocation services for people? Like, you're poor, you're impoverished, you're drug addicted, and you're homeless. Like, but you know all the contacts for the drug dealers here. And it's not the first time that I've heard that story either, that this isn't going to work. You know, I know where to go when things get
Yeah,
hard.
that's
Is
an
it
interesting
something we need to think
idea.
about? Like, you know,
Because I mean,
tickets,
when
train
you
tickets,
accept it,
Greyhound bus tickets, like, and not like from an individual, but from some kind of service or something like that. Like, you apply and then we're going to check you into a rehab in that place over there that you've never been before. And here's the money in order to get there, and check in when you get there, or something like that. Is that a part of the solution to break people's dependency network?
I wonder just how intimidating people would find that though. Because I mean, on one hand, hey, my addicted brain knows exactly where I need to go here. On the other hand, I don't know that other place, and that's scary.
Yeah, well, it
So
would
I don't
definitely
know.
have to be on the request of you know, or at the behest of people who wanted to get out. But it's definitely not the first time I've heard from a homeless person. My problem is that I cannot break this because it's just too close. You know, like every time that I do get clean, like many homeless people and many homeless addicts in particular, have been to rehab time after time after time, and it just hasn't worked. I mean, the life that you go back to after you exit a rehab clinic is so hard on the street in the first place. And then you still know all of the people and you know all of the places to go. And I
Hmm.
don't know that it would help, but it's like, it's a question, it's an idea, you know, for those who are ready and willing to travel and who, you know, want to go through a rehab, you know, maybe a local rehab clinic, like a local rehab process. You go through the rehab process, and at the end, it's like, we, you know, the government, we through funding and that kind of a stuff, will provide you with a Greyhound ticket to a location where we can arrange for you to have a bed and a shelter when you land there. Do you want it? That might be, you know, because the solution here, whatever it is fucking complicated, you know? Because
Yeah.
it's not,
Well.
the people who you're trying to help want to help themselves on and off, you know, and they
Hmm.
recognize that. They're willing to admit that. Yes, there's certain times where I'm just like, fuck it, I'm, you know, diving deep on my addiction. And there are other times when they get their head above water and they're like, this has to stop. I'm killing myself. This is horrible. I can't live like this anymore. And when their heads are above water, how do you like reach in, grab their hand, and pull them out in such a way that they have a chance of staying out before that demon that's come in with the chemicals into their bloodstream and into their brains gets back a hold of it? Because there are going to be hard times. So, can we make it easier? Can we provide that level of support?
I think Oh, why are there no names? I think just cheered 100 bits.
Thank you.
Saying, we could try to start a charity to get shit like this set up because no one else is going to do it. I mean, I think there are charities, I don't know about this specific idea, but there definitely are charities doing this kind of thing. The main problem I see is just that no one really knows about them. Like,
Yeah, that's
until
a problem.
today,
Being able to
I
communicate
didn't
to the
know about
homeless.
StreetLink, and I only found StreetLink because I Googled it. And StreetLink, if you don't know, is the UK government's thing that it's like its system for saying, hey, I've came across this homeless guy, I want to help him, I'm gonna put him into the system and please help this man. And then the actual charities and the volunteer organizations will be like, hey, this guy's just shown up on the database, this guy's must be new homeless person in the area, you know, let's find them and contact them and get in touch and provide the support and whatnot. Because there's the disconnect between people wanting to help and then the organizations that are there to provide the help, and actually, I don't know, something to do with the communication between them. I feel like I don't know any homeless charities. I don't really know where to go to start pointing a homeless person towards where they should get help. And so maybe it's just dehumanizing homelessness. So doing something in the public kind of society
Unre-dehumanizing.
mind. Yes. To just have us try and stoke a little bit of that empathy that I was touching on
That
earlier.
Jesus Christ was talking about in the New Testament, and that most Christians in modern America apparently fucking missed.
Yeah. Have forgotten or never paid attention to properly in the first place. Mosaic Task Force also cheered 100 bits. Thank you very much, Mosaic. Says, support your local KPE4 charity stream. Well, KPE4 definitely will support some sort of homeless charity, I think. Oh, how's the audio?
Think I bumped a cable?
Yeah, I heard it.
Do you still hear
I heard
it?
a kind of noise.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to everyone. Oh no, that's probably the background noise from the furnace now. Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Unless you tell me.
Yeah, so KPE4, in case you don't know, just briefly, the plan is, rather than just picking one charity, I want to pick a few different ones that I think are really good, that other people like have been evidenced to be really good, and to allow anyone who wants to take part in the event to choose which they would rather support. And yeah, homelessness is something that is just one of my criticisms, not criticisms as such, but one of the things I've said about charity water in the past is that it feels quite remote to me. I get behind the cause in a big way, but it doesn't hit close to home. And I feel like homelessness is one of those things that, at least for me, having lived in a city where it seems quite prevalent, that is something that I feel like I could really impact. You know, we could really kind of hit and actually have some sort of effect. So yes, it's going to take some deciding on what is a suitable way to go about that, but I want KP to just support that in some way.
Yeah, I like that
It's
as
one of those
a
problems. You know?
as a possible charity for the, you know, if we can find some way to involve that in the charity, because that is it's a major problem. And I don't hate the idea, Harv, of you know, starting something up. I know that it would take like way more work than the two of us could do, but you know, that's why other people exist, is to just carry on the whims of two jackass live streamers on Twitch without them
that is
having to
their
do the
entire-
hard work.
Yeah, the entire point of their existence, I'm very
Right.
sure.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
Other people.
The
That's,
world
why
revolves
else would they
around
be
me.
there?
And other people exist to serve my whims. Yeah, as you said, yeah.
Yeah, someone is clipping
you say-
that from the live stream right now.
Please do. It is my accurate views and should not be taken out of context. And trust me, if you get the past 10 seconds, that's all the context anyone needs. Yeah. starting a charity is quite a big thing that I lack the admin experience, but if we kind of coin a good, not coin, if we come across a good idea for something that is not being done that actually might be very beneficial, then, yeah, looking into kind of setting something up and getting people involved and just validating whether it's actually a good idea or not, that kind of stuff I would definitely get behind. But it's enough work just trying to run a weekly talk show called Harv and Pawn, which you can support at patreon.com/Harv and Pawn. Don't give your money to homeless people, give it to us instead.
In order to prevent us from becoming homeless people.
Yeah, preventative rather than treating symptoms. Yeah.
That's always better. It's always better.
Apparently.
We have sort of come to the end of the live stream here, so I want to thank you all for joining us. Thank you for your cheers and your subs and your bits and so forth and so on, and for staying with us for the live stream, for your comments in chat. We have been reading. We've just been ignoring you. No, we've been just been exploring our own personal experiences. There's so much more to say. I just was trying to find on my PC, like, my... Oh, thank you, Turbonutter. I was trying to find my old I journaled everything that happened.
Yeah.
While I was
ask
homeless.
you. Yeah.
It exists somewhere out there on a blog spot, and I was trying to find it by some of the things that I used to, like, the words that I remember and things like... Ooh, wait, I got one. The name of a certain fella?
I mean, another topic for Harv and Pawn in the future, if you do ever find it. Another possible thing to talk about. And if there are any specific kind of thoughts or ideas or suggestions for topics that you would like to hear us discuss for a couple of hours rather than maybe the 1 hour we've had today, then you can suggest them to us. Oh, thanks very much for the 10 bits, Dramasium. Write a book, porn, about your journey. Sounds like you kind of did that already, doesn't it?
I've got about 100 and some pages, I would guess, of it. But that does
That's about
remind
a
me
book
also,
worth,
why are there no
yeah.
names? Thank you for cheering earlier. It didn't trigger the overlay, but thank you for your cheer, Pawn. You aren't exactly known for being subtle. The fuck do you mean by that shit?
What was I saying? I was saying something. Discussion topics. Yes. Anyone can suggest the discussion topic. We need all the ideas we can get. What happens is that we stick the ones we like and we think we have something important or at least something interesting to contribute to the realm of conversation into a poll, and that poll is votable by our dear Patreon supporters, our Twitch subscribers, and that's it.
Homeless
Just
people.
those two groups of people.
Homeless people.
And homeless people.
who we encounter on the street. We say, "What do you think we should talk about?" And then they say, okay, so my car is broken down and my 4 kids are in the car and I just got I need $3 worth of gas in order to get 20 miles up the street so that I can get my kids out of the cold in the car. And it's running right now. Oh no, that wouldn't make it's. That's kind of the thing that you're used to with homelessness is you always get a story that sounds like bullshit. And, that comes out of, there are just people in the marketplace who are going to do that. People in the marketplace of homeless people trying to get money from you who are going to do that. And then imagine that you're homeless and you're trying to get people to give you money and you're just being honest and decent and saying, listen, I'm homeless. Could you give me a couple of bucks? And meanwhile, there's a dude over here who's like, I just need money for a taxi. I'm trying to get my father's funeral. It's like a competition in the marketplace that drives people to be more and more vicious and deceitful in what they're doing. So you hear those stories all of the time when you're, interacting with what were you calling them? People who are sleeping rough?
Sleepers.
Rough sleepers.
Apparently, that's kind of the distinction that people try to use rather than using the term homelessness. So, because there are people who are homeless who actually are sleeping in homes or or shelters or something overnight. So rough sleepers is the subset who are actually sleeping out on the streets.
You know, I actually
Yeah.
don't hate what Why Are There No Names is saying there. Just be honest. If you want drug money, ask for drug money. And, you know,
Yeah. I
it,
mean, like you were saying with the people across the road from you, the fact that they were just straight up honest about it was
yeah,
way better.
we're
You
addicts.
know, there's no
And, yeah,
deceit.
we don't
And this
want to
is
be
something
addicts, but we're addicts and we're homeless. And
we're
we're just
we're kind of
addicts.
wrapping up the topic now, but this is one of the things I was going to maybe talk about, which is how my kind of philosophy to responding to beggars has changed over time. And it used to be that I kind of did what most people do, which is just kind of ignore it or say, I haven't got any change on me, sorry, and basically lie because most people don't carry change, and sometimes that's like a genuine kind of like, hey, I would, but I don't have any change. Most of the time, you say that because, regardless of whether you have change or not, you don't want to give them money. You're just using a polite excuse to try and not say that.
Mm.
And I feel like that dishonesty is, I just really don't like not being honest with people. And so what I say now is pretty much most cases just no, sorry. And if someone really pushes me, then I just say, no, I don't want to give you money. Sorry. You know, just be honest. I feel like there's more respect in the honesty, even if it's not what someone wants to hear. That I think, yeah, I think that's respectable, and a better way to live.
I personally do just lie to people. I live in Detroit, man. This happens like on a daily basis. If I'm out of the house, somebody comes up to me and they say, "Hey, man, I just need some change." Like, actually, I sometimes give them money, I sometimes don't. I just kind of sniff out the situation, sniff out the person, and without even talking to them, I just kind of, yeah, all right, sure, and a couple of just whatever I've got in my coin purse, and I literally have a coin purse because, as I mentioned earlier, drag queen. But yeah, I'll either give them or I'll just like say, Jay, no, I don't have anything. And I don't feel bad about it at all anymore, Harvey. I have gone through the Dharma gate of not giving a shit about whether or not I tell you the truth or tell you a lie when you are a person on the street asking me for money. You know, judge me on that. Feel free and judge me on that.
I
Especially
do.
with the
You're a
Connor Ace
fucking
thing and
liar.
calling a
I
motherfucker out
hate
for
you.
lying and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, when it's like some little petty, just a moment, I'm just another number in their book of people who have walked past them today that they're going to try and shake down for a couple of, pence. If I feel good right now and I'm flush, sure, here's some money. I'm never flush. But if I've got some change in my coin purse, sure, here you go. And if I don't feel good right now and you're bothering me and my back hurts, I'm trying to carry this fucking thing and my CFS, my ME is kicking in, then you know what? Oh, damn. I'm out. Oh, I'm tapped. Ah, fuck. I've gone past morality. I'm into a new Buddha plane of existence where there is no right, there is no wrong, there is only this. And on that note,
So
have we come to the end of the live stream?
there is no right, there is no wrong, there is only this. And this is Harv and Pawn. Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a good show today. Half the stream just chatting about whatever he wants to talk about. Over half of the stream talking about homelessness and kind of airing our experiences and our thoughts and our ideas. And we hope you enjoyed it. If you did, 9 p.m. UK time, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, live on twitch.tv/Harv and Pawn, available on YouTube afterwards. We have a YouTube channel
On the
now.
Wednesdays. Yes, we do.
What?
We have a YouTube
Wow.
channel now.
A whole YouTube channel where you can see all of the content that we've made for the show.
Already knows where it is in chat. We'll link to it for you because it's not easy to get to, and I didn't do the thing we talked about where I was going to make the URL thing that goes. I haven't gotten to that yet. So yeah.
If you're watching on a VOD, description. Check
Yeah, in the description. You gonna put that there? I ain't gonna put that there.
I will try and remember to put it in the description now that I've said it will be. But yes, that's where all the content is going. Eventually we're going to phase these VODs off of our own separate channels. And so we're really kind of desperate to try and grow Harv and Pawn. the people, those of you who are actually watching this and are actually enjoying this on YouTube, for the love of God, please subscribe to Harv and Pawn and hit that bell, because we need to know the kind of relative size of this audience and have you all in one place so that you can see everything and it no longer is as distributed as it is currently. That's going to be the new central, so you're doing yourself a disservice if you're enjoying this content and you don't just go and subscribe to that channel. So
Thank you,
do it,
Dramacian, who's
basically.
just posted it in chat, apparently. So if you're watching on the VOD, it's /channel / capital U, capital C, capital L, lowercase a, capital J, lowercase l, capital... Well, you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. Harvey, give me a, like, hard outro that I can then, like, set everything up and click on.
Ladies and gentlemen, and those of you in between, this has been Harv and Pawn. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much to our Patreon subscribers and our Twitch patrons, to kind of mix those up royally. Your names are about to appear on screen, hopefully, very much.
If I do this right.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And now, Pawn, take it away with the outro.
No, I'm gonna play my own things. You don't have to.
Okay. Harv, Pawn, Harv, Pawn, Harv and Pawn, and 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 Harv and Pawn. Harv and Pawn.